So it's about understanding that a lot of times we try to fix our weaknesses and we try to push down our flaws. And the idea that the really innovative companies and the ones that kind of think outside the norm realize that their flaws are actually the things that make them stand out and that make them awesome.
Are you ready to unlock the secrets of brand innovation? Here you'll discover unexpected ways to make your brand soar in value. Get ready for inspiring stories, actionable tips, and insights you'll need to build your brand and learn an entirely new way to fly. This is the Hummingbird Effect. And now your host, Wendy Coulter.
Hi, I'm Wendy Coulter, and I help CEOs and marketing leaders unlock the hidden power of their brands. For years, business leaders have focused on marketing tactics, but what truly matters is building a strong brand. Think of it like the Hummingbird Effect. Small innovations in branding can lead to surprisingly big results in other areas: increased valuation, stronger culture, and a marketing message that resonates. Today, we're diving deeper in the world of brand building, and I'm thrilled to have with me Stan Phelps, a fabulous author, keynote speaker, and workshop facilitator. Stan authors a really cool series of books I'll call the Goldfish series, covering topics including differentiation, loyalty, customer and employee experience, culture, technology and innovation, and purpose. I connected with Stan initially in 2015.
Wow.
It was my company's 20th year anniversary, and we hosted the High Five Conference with the local chapter of the American Marketing Association. I'm trying to remember, were you president?
I was president,
Yes.
15 and 16, yeah.
That's what I thought. We had an amazing time at that conference. It was so much fun.
Yeah,
And I think what I love most about having gotten to know you and what you're doing is that you have this simple approach to branding and marketing. And that's focused on little ways to drive differentiation, increase loyalty, and promote positive word of mouth.
right.
So today we're going to chat with Stan about how he has seen the Hummingbird Effect in action as seemingly small innovations lead to big wins. So Stan, welcome to the show.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
Yeah, awesome. Well, I've got Hannah here with me today too. And Hannah is my sidekick with Hummingbird. And she keeps the conversation going with some recap as we go along. And so just want
Sure.
you to know who she is and
Hey,
why
Hannah.
she's sitting in
Hello.
front of you.
Excited to hear from you.
So I have two fun facts about you that I
Okay.
want to start with. So one is that you have this amazing background, and you can explain it a little bit better.
Sure.
But I think you had like a logo that could be seen from space
For KFC, yeah.
that you created. So
Helped
that
launch the new logo for KFC, yeah.
that is an
So
amazing
big you
story.
could see it from space, and I know that because we shot it with the Google satellite. 650 million media impressions. It went viral.
That
We
is
did it. It was called
crazy.
the face from space. So it was the Colonel, and we did it out near Area 51 in Nevada. And yeah, it was amazing. Yeah, I used to do really kind of larger than life experiential marketing.
And that was when you were at Synergy
Synergy, yeah.
Experiences. Yeah, that is awesome. The other thing that I think is really cool is your background with sports marketing.
Mm,
Let's see, baseball, tennis, golf.
golf, yeah.
Yeah. And so we might have to talk about World University Games because that's a project that we're working on
Oh, okay, with Hill.
with
Nice.
Hill locally, bringing the World University Games to the state of North Carolina in 2029. And we're in the midst of it. And so,
Yeah, it's really exciting.
yeah. So what did I leave out? I did my two fun facts. So tell us about you, Stan.
So I started my career on the agency side with a group called IMG, International Management Group. And then I went to the brand side with Adidas for about 9 years. Part of that was working with the New York Yankees. Part of it was managing global tennis for the brand. And then I came back to this. I was living overseas for a while in Amsterdam. I came back to the States and I worked for a couple of years in golf with the PGA of America. And then as we talked about some of those fun activations, I spent about 9 years with a group called Synergy out of the New York metro area.
And I think I saw another project that you have presented at one of your talks in the middle of Times Square.
Okay, yeah. We once put a 40-foot Viking ship into Times Square, and it was for Walmart to launch all of the merchandise for a movie called How to Train Your Dragon.
Yeah.
Do you remember?
Love that movie.
Yeah. In just around the corner in Bryant Park for Starbucks, we rebuilt the original Starbucks for just one day
I think I remember when
to
that happened.
launch Pike Place Roast. And Howard Schultz called it the largest and the loudest event in the history of Starbucks. Yeah. And those events were great. Some went viral, some won awards, but they weren't sustainable and they weren't scalable. And I thought there had to be a better way moving forward in marketing. And all I knew is I was part of the problem and nowhere near the solution.
But those are those projects that as marketers, like we dream of doing
Right.
stuff like that, right? It's larger than life. It's huge budgets.
Yeah.
I always kind of question, and I'm curious to ask you whether the ROI in the end, everybody wants to measure that now, right?
Right.
So, is it disappointing or is it just that you don't know and it's more brand awareness or like what happens when that question gets asked
Yeah,
at the end
it
of the
is.
day?
A lot of it is measured through media impressions. So a CPM type of equivalency. And, those events were fun, but they weren't scalable and they weren't sustainable. If you were trying to get earned media coverage, you were at the whim of whatever was happening in the world. You could
Right.
launch the biggest thing ever and something happens in the world news and it just dominates and falls flat.
But there's all those people from other planets that see your
But see,
logo from
yeah.
space that we
What-
can't do the
Yeah.
analytics
One
on
of
that.
one of my favorites, and this is for M&Ms, and it was to help launch a website where you could create your own avatar of yourself as an M&M. So we created a 7-story tall Statue of Liberty M&M, put it on a barge, and floated it right into New York Harbor, right in front of the actual statue.
That's cool.
Yeah. But here's the thing. I mean, again, I thought that stuff, even though it was effective
Mhm.
and sometimes it was thrilling to do, I just realized that it wasn't sustainable. And so I had about 15 years ago what I call my moment of truth that led me to start a project that ended up becoming a book and has subsequently become a whole book series. And I'll give you the short story. Is out with a colleague. We're about to go to a networking event. We were both on the business development side for the agency. And we're at this rooftop bar in Manhattan and we're waiting for people before going to this networking event. And I noticed this older gentleman sitting across from us by himself, and he's obviously waiting. And so we strike up this conversation about the etiquette of waiting. And this guy said to me, he said, waiting. And we talked about being on time. He goes, no one in life is ever on time. And I was dumbfounded. I'm like, wait a second, I've been on time before. And he stuck his finger in my face and gave me the finger wave. And he said, no, he doubled down. He goes, in fact, he said, on time is a myth. He said, people in life are either early or they're late. And I never forgot that. I went home to Connecticut where I was living that night. And I thought to myself, that same thing applies in marketing. And so much about marketing is about the prospect. And I thought not enough about marketing was about the customer. And this idea of, either being early or late, never being on time was similar to meeting expectations of your clients and customers. And that nobody ever truly meets them. You either exceed them or you fall short. And so given the choice of doing a little bit more or a little bit less, I specifically started to look for companies that did a little more, little things that could truly make a big difference.
So that's a great segue to talk about a hummingbird effect.
Yes.
So are you ready? Let's do that.
Sure, absolutely.
So tell me about a specific instance where a seemingly small change in a marketing or branding strategy led to a significant and positive outcome or results for a business that
Sure.
you've been a part of.
Sure. Well, I'll say it personally for myself. So I talk about the importance of the experience. I talk about the importance of being different. And I think, especially in business, when you meet someone for the first time, it's maybe not as standard as it used to be, but you would always exchange business cards. And I thought to myself, do I do the typical, blank on one side? I'm like, no, there's no way I'm going to do that because it's not true to who I am. I want something that's going to be like that first handshake that's going to make that great first impression. And so my name of my company to this day is 9-inch Marketing. And so I created a tri-fold business card that would fold up with my logo, and it was a functional logo. And the idea is simple behind 9 inches. It's simply the distance between the stem of your brain and the top of your heart. And so the goal of any great piece of marketing or great experience that you create is about reaching the heart of your customer. And so I love that, but as much as I loved the 9-inch theme, that it was kind of counter to my Goldfish series. And so I wanted something different. And I was really at a crossroads because I loved this as kind of that great first impression. And I'll never forget it. In 2015, I was at a conference and I saw this example of what's called a mini book. And so I ended up creating a mini book, but it's specifically has a business card in the mini book. And I'm like, that is, as an author, that is something for me that I want to be able to have as a signature thing that I do that's different from anyone else, that really tells the story of me as an author and the why behind what I do. And so I put it together. It's part color, part black and white. It's kind of a neat piece. And I've now, over the last 9 years, given away over 10,000 mini books.
That's awesome.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's awesome. And so talk about the results of that. Talk about that, how that has made a difference in your mind.
Well, I wanted to be very specific with a business card. I wanted to look at it almost like a Trojan horse. Right? Most people, when they get a business card, maybe they connect with somebody on LinkedIn and they chuck the card. Well, I know as a speaker, I'm only relevant when somebody has an exact need for a keynote or a workshop. And so I wanted this to be able to, something that people would hang on to and go, oh, I remember that guy with that card, and for them to go into the file or the desk drawer and be able to pull this out. And so I've had many instances with, I've met somebody and 5 years later, they're like, oh, we thought of you and we pulled out your card. So it's been a real great vehicle for me that has a lot of legs to it.
Well, I think that's always a great goal in marketing, is to leave something behind that they hold on to
Right.
instead of it going into that vertical
Right.
file under the desk.
A circular file. Yeah.
Circular file under the desk.
My first agency that I worked for, IMG, was founded by a guy named Mark McCormick. And he was really a pioneer within sports marketing. In fact, he was famous because he wrote a book called What They Don't Teach You at Harvard Business School. And he was just a pioneer. Anyway, he would always say, you never go in, this is old school, you never go anywhere without a pen or a business card. And I always remembered that as a little bit of advice. In fact, I met my wife in the airport in Amsterdam, and I had known her from all the way back to high school, and we just ran into each other. I gave her my business card, and lo and behold, a year later, she's moving her office. She finds my card, she reaches out to me. And we just last week celebrated our 20th wedding anniversary.
That's
So
awesome.
I credit it to
There's
the
some
business
success.
card. Yeah.
There's some success of the marketing,
Right.
right? It touched the heart.
Yeah.
It touched the heart. So I think it's cool with the 9 inches, right? That you've kind of taken the length of the 9 inches, turned that into a business card.
Right.
And so it emulates, measurement,
Right.
which I think is really interesting too. And just a great story about touching the heart. I think that's what we're all trying to do as marketers. And it's interesting how difficult that is. You talked about that. I think to me, that being like the longest the longest
Yeah.
and hardest 9
Inches in
inches
marketing.
to go in
Yeah.
marketing,
Is to reach
right?
the heart. And I think it's a lot of times business tends to be very transactional. And where can you go transactionally? You can't go. It's a zero-sum game. And so it's the idea of how can you do little things, in my belief, to go above and beyond the transaction, to honor the relationship.
So I think you did a little bit of research around these small things that companies are doing. Can you talk about the research you've done around that and maybe a couple of great examples of
Sure.
where you've seen these small things have a big impact?
Yeah. So as I mentioned, I had that moment of truth, and I didn't know it was going to become a book, but I'm like, I'm going to start to look for examples. And I had a blog at the time. And so I started this thing called the Purple Goldfish Project. And I don't know.
Our color.
Yeah, purple.
We
Yeah.
love some purple.
And a little bit of why I called it that. So I had learned this word that comes from New Orleans, and the word is called lagniappe. And lagniappe dates all the way back to the 1800s. It's Creole. It means the gift or to give more. So the idea is that when you did business when you worked with a merchant or a business, they would always do a little something extra to, again, honor the relationship. And I just love that. And so I started to look. So purple, ode to New Orleans, because it's one of the 3 colors of Mardi Gras. And the goldfish, is the idea of something small, right? And what we talked about measurement before. What's fascinating to me is that the average goldfish is the size of your thumb. The world's largest goldfish is nearly 20 inches. Think about that. It'd be like walking out of this studio right now and bumping into somebody who's 3 stories tall.
Wow, yeah.
5 to 6 times your size. It's like,
That's crazy.
how is that? I don't even know if there's another animal that rivals that. And so there are 5 reasons why a goldfish grows. And turns out those same 5 reasons, I believe, apply to any organization. And the only one of those 5 reasons that you have control over is genetic makeup. So the things that you do to stand out and be different in the marketplace. And I'm a firm believer that you don't differentiate on what you do. Because if we're honest, a lot of other people do what you do. You might have a different formula for your product or service, but really how you differentiate it is why you do it. And I think as importantly, how you do it. And so how you can do those little things to reinforce your why and to differentiate your delivery of that experience are key. So to get back to your example, so I don't know why I decided this, but I decided to collect 1,001 examples.
Just a little bit.
Yeah.
Just a little bit more.
Yeah. I tell
Do
people.
that a little more, yeah.
Right. I tell people I should have taken advice that someone once gave me about cross-country skiing. Have you ever done cross-country? Super
No.
difficult. Super difficult. So my friend told me about cross-country skiing. He said, Stan, if you ever decide to do cross-country skiing, he goes, here's the advice. He said, start with a small country. And so I should never have picked 1,001. It was, 501 sounds great. And so it took me 27 months. I remember after the first few weeks, I had about 200 examples, and I'm like, oh, I'll get this done in like 6
Right.
months. you run out of your connections, and
you killed it though.
but
I mean, really,
I
it
stuck
feels
with
like it would take longer than that to do over 1,000 examples. So you were really focused on your goal.
Thank God for social media, and I blogged about it. I syndicated my blog, and people would come. I got examples from all around the world. And so it can be as simple as, like, I love the DoubleTree Hotel as an example, right? Right when you check in, you get a warm chocolate chip cookie. And I've stayed at DoubleTrees all around the world. And it's all of the dough comes from Nashville, Tennessee. So it's consistent, warm. It's that nice, warm welcome and first impression. And I'll never forget the first time. I remember my very first business trip I was on. I went to Atlanta. Our flight was delayed. We got in late, no dinner. I was so hungry I could have eaten my fingers. And I remember I almost did when they gave me that chocolate chip cookie. It made such an impression. So that's a fun example. Five Guys Burgers and Fries is one of my Hall of Famers. So I love the bonus fries that you get. I love, they're different than almost any other burger place that you go to. Your burger doesn't hit the grill till you order it. And so it takes longer. And one of the little ways that they kind of manage that waiting is with the free peanuts that you get. So yeah, they're just a few of the examples. One of the fun ones I really like is from an ice cream shop in Minnesota. It's a place called Izzy's Ice Cream. And we think of sampling as something that we do to try to get a new customer in the door. But why not use that same principle with somebody who's already buying from you? And so this ice cream shop does this little small scoop of ice cream. When you buy a scoop of ice cream, they let you pick a second flavor and give you this mini scoop.
That's cool. Yeah.
And the mini scoop is called the Izzy. And they trademarked it. It's amazing. You buy 2 scoops, you get 2 Izzies. And so I love it as a little small way that you can give an additional taste to somebody who's already buying from you. And why don't we use that in marketing, to just enhance the experience that we provide? How do we get somebody buying more from us?
So I'm going to throw you for a loop.
Sure.
So we do a lot of B2B. And the examples you're given are B2C for the most part. Have you seen something that really stands out with a B2B example?
I've got a whole deck that's B2B. And to be fair, of the 1,000 plus that I got, because we all live in a B2C world for the most part, the vast majority, 90, probably 5% were B2C. But I'll give you a couple that I like. So one is there's a company called Cartridge World.
Yes.
So they, back in the franchise, would go out to businesses replacing toner in copiers. And so they do a couple small little things. One is before they replace the toner, they will vacuum it out. Now, it's a small thing that they do, but probably from a maintenance perspective, important. They also, when they deliver the new toners and install them, and it seems such a little silly thing, but whoever the office manager is, they will always leave a couple Tootsie Pops.
Oh.
And they always know the flavor that they like. And a lot of times they're not the person that's maybe even ordering it, but it's the person that they deal with. And to me, it's just a little small touch to kind of thank them for their business. Yeah. So, I think some people say to me, well, is it easier to do B2C or is it easier to do B2B? And I think it's much easier to do if you have 50 or 500 customers than if you have 5,000 or 5 million customers. So I think the same intent is how do you do little things either to add value or little things to make it easier for them to do business with you? How do you remove friction to be easier to do business with? And so I think there are plenty of options there.
Do you want to stay ahead with insightful tips and industry-leading knowledge to build your business value through better branding? Sign up for the Birds of Wisdom email newsletter from Hummingbird Creative Group. The newsletter is packed with expert advice and the latest trends to help you elevate your brand. Visit hummingbird-creative.com today to subscribe. Don't miss out. Join the community and let's soar together.
So you gave the example at one of the talks that I heard you at about Panera, and it's just such an amazing story that I want to ask you to share that one.
Sure.
And I actually think this is a bit unexpected, this story with Panera and what happened.
Right.
And the unexpected part is who shared it and how it grew. So
Right.
can you talk about Panera a little bit?
Sure. So this story happens a number of summers ago in New Hampshire, and it revolves around a kid named Brandon Cook. And Brandon was visiting his grandmother in the hospital. Unfortunately, she was down to her last days. She had terminal cancer. In fact, she had pancreatic cancer, which I didn't realize, but it's maybe the worst form of cancer you can get, especially at the end. You get to the point where you can no longer eat. And here's Brandon sitting with his grandmother, and he's pleading with her as he watches her suffer to have something to eat. And finally she looks up at Brandon. She says, Brandon, she says, what I'd really like is some soup. But she probably had a smile. She goes, not the crap they serve at the hospital. She goes, what I would really like is a bread bowl of clam chowder. Now, Panera is one of the only places you can go to reliably get that. And this happened during the summer. It was on a Monday. And during the summer, Panera only serves clam chowder in the bread bowl on Fridays. But as I recount many times, Brandon, being the millennial he is, he simply reaches into his pocket, and within 1 minute, he's found the closest Panera, and he's on the phone, and he gets Sue, the manager, Susan Fortier, and he explains the situation to Sue, and she says, Brandon, stop. She says, come on down to the store. Myself and the team would be happy to help you and your grandmother out. And so he drives the 10 minutes in Nashua, New Hampshire, and she gives him a couple of bread bowls of clam chowder. In fact, her and the team were thoughtful enough, they gave Brandon a little thing of cookies for he and his grandmother to share. And as Brandon tells the story, he goes back to the hospital. And for that short time, it kind of sustained her. It made her happy. And he just had a wonderful afternoon with his grandmother. And as he's driving home that afternoon, he thinks to himself, well, that was just a small thing, but it meant so much to him and his grandmother that he decided when he got home that day, he was going to write about the experience. And so he posted the story on Facebook. His mom, Gail, reads his post. She's so moved by it. She copies it. She puts it on Panera's Facebook page. And that's when something magical happened. Because just a couple days later, someone had forwarded it to me because of the experience and how touching it was. And I immediately liked it. And I was the 810,801st person to like that post. That post got nearly, you can still look it up to this day, it's got over 36,000 comments, many of which came from Panera's own employees that said, this is a reason why I work here at Panera, because they empower us to do the little things like this. And so what's amazing to me is because I think it reveals something that's so core yet so forgotten in business. And it's the idea that about 80% of how we view people comes down to just two questions. What is their intent towards us? And then what's their ability to carry out that intent? And social psychologists will call that intent piece. They call it warmth. And then the ability to carry it out, they label as competence. And that's amazing. 80% of how we view people, and this is how our brain developed, our survival dependent upon us answering these questions in a split second. And it turns out over 50% of how we view the organizations that we do business with, same two questions. And so how are you doing the little things that speak to your warmth and your competence, right? How do you show little things that reinforce your why? And how do you do little things to demonstrate your competence that you're easy to do business with? And I think that's what's lost a lot.
Especially in the world today. I mean, retail's so different. Customer experience is so different. But, the story about Gail sharing that, you got to love a mom,
Right.
but you don't necessarily expect that is what's going to lead to a big culture shift within the company
Right.
where everyone is sharing, look at this. This is why I'm here. I think that goes to those unexpected outcomes that we talk
Right.
about, Hannah, where, yes, they provided great customer service to someone. They did something really nice, but probably didn't really expect it to go much further than that
Sure.
experience in that afternoon. And
Well, let me share one thing because you mentioned unexpected, right? So in Panera is what's called a fast casual or a QSR, right? So for example, when Subway did their $5 footlong, it was the most successful promotion that they ever did. And the year that they put that out there, I think they grew like 6 or 7%. That's massive
yeah,
when you talk QSR or fast casual. Like that is off the charts. The year that Brandon Cook story happened, Panera grew almost by 20%.
holy wow.
20%. Now,
Wow.
is that just because of the Brandon Cook story? I don't think so. I think they were at a point where people were starting to really catch the brand and they were different in the
But it
marketplace.
certainly didn't hurt
Didn't
because
hurt.
I've looked at the numbers on that post and
Yeah.
it certainly didn't hurt
No.
to have that kind of viral share that is such a heart-touching story. Not something that the marketing team put out,
Right.
not something that was a planned part of a social content
Right.
calendar, right?
Right. And think about how much would it cost or what would you do as a brand
to have
to
that
have a
exposure.
single post to get almost 1 million likes, right? It's crazy.
So tell us about kind of how the experience of finding these 1,001 stories change your perspective on the way that you look at experiential marketing now, and maybe what kind of advice you would give to marketing leaders or
Right.
CEOs of companies to kind of shift that paradigm of let's make our logo be seen from space,
Right.
right?
Well, I tell people, the latest stats is like they ask companies, what's the number one thing that you're going to compete on? And research recently by Gartner said almost 9 out of 10 companies say the experience they provide now is going to be the number one thing that they compete on going forward. Before I started that project, they'd been asking that question for ages. And you only have to go back 10 years ago and only 36% of organizations thought the experience was the biggest thing. So I think there has been a shift. I think there's also a simple, I think the mathematics have changed such that it's really expensive to acquire new customers. It's become harder and harder to get people into the funnel and get them acquired. And I think it used to be that people would look at, all right, we have a traditionally acquired customer and we have a referred customer. Well, they roughly have to be the same value to our organization. And it's not even close. If you take care of the customer that you have, and via word of mouth and referral that they bring somebody into the organization, they stay longer and they spend more, up to twice the amount over their lifetime if they've been referred. And as a function of staying longer, but because they've been referred themselves, what do they tend to do more often? Refer. And so a referred customer, at least by my math, can be upwards of 4 times as valuable as a traditionally acquired customer. And so I think the mantra is take care of the customers you have and give them a great experience. They will bring you the customers you want. Now, I'm not saying that and I've always said this, I think traditional marketing is absolutely key, but maybe the emphasis should be about 50-50, that you should be investing in marketing to your current customers and also marketing to prospective customers. And I tell, until that 50-50 at least focus is coming to, that spend is there, my work's not going to be done.
So I think I've also heard you speak on innovation. I think you did a keynote for one of our clients, actually, and you touched a little bit on innovation
Right.
at that talk. Can you just converse with me about how you've seen maybe what the most innovative activity you've seen is, or how you've seen innovation really impact one of these experiences in a unique way?
Yeah. So one of my favorite books in the series is Pink, which is really trying to.
It's your favorite
That's
color.
right, yes.
Yeah,
His favorite color.
I was excited that you brought it with you.
So it's about understanding that a lot of times we try to fix our weaknesses and we try to push down our flaws. And the idea that the really innovative companies and the ones that kind of think outside the norm realize that their flaws are actually the things that make them stand out and that make them awesome. Or as we say in the book, the things that make them flawsome. And so, sometimes the opposite of a good thing is also a good thing. And so that's by far from getting people to think innovatively. We've got a great assessment in the book that helps people understand their strengths and their weaknesses, and the idea that every weakness has a corresponding strength. And that there are specific strategies. There's, in fact, 8 strategies that you can do to really embrace that uniqueness, the things that make you weird and different.
8 strategies.
Yeah.
Okay. And does that involve any experimentation? Like, is that part of a strategy?
So I'll give them to you really quick. Flaunting is the idea of owning who you are.
Mm-hmm.
Webster's defines it really positively, to parade without shame, like to own who you are. Lopsiding is a strategy. So lopsiding is not only owning it, but doubling and tripling down on your weirdness.
Okay. I was thinking my favorite emoji that's like.
The A is antagonizing. You should never try to be for everyone. You should be very focused on your target. But we say in the book, maybe it's okay to push away those that you never wanted to be part of, and you can have a little fun with it while you're at it. W is withholding. One of the ways you can stand out is if everyone within your category does A, B, C, and D, the fact that you only do A, B, and C makes you different and stand out. Not by doing more, but by doing less. There's the S is called swerving. And swerving is a little, we'll talk about micro weirding in a second, but it's not a massive jump. It's not lopsiding. It's not withholding. It's kind of what we call just a small swerve. Opposing is when everyone starts to follow the leader and do what's normal. Some brands have the courage to go in the exact opposite direction, right? And then the M is micro weirding, which is very much purple goldfish. It's small things that you do, either more or less to stand out. And then E is the latest in our 2.0. It's called exposing. And exposing is owning everything that's said about you, especially the negative stuff, because a lot of the things that maybe negatively are said about you are speaking truth to your brand. And so we have got great examples in the book of companies that have used their 1-star reviews as the kind of window to their brand.
Mm-hmm. So we were just talking about strategies around reviews recently in the office, and we might need to read more about that.
Right.
So
Right.
We've got a client whose reviews are less than stellar that we're trying to talk through that process of what do you do with that.
Right.
And it's kind of a tough category. And so that's really interesting.
Yeah. And especially if it's stuff that is true to who you are and what makes you different.
Yeah.
Don't shy away from it. So the fun example one of the fun examples we share in the book is the idea that there I think it's 56 national parks, U.S. national parks.
Mm-hmm.
Every one of the national parks has at least a 1-star review. A national park.
Wow.
I'll give you the one for the Grand Canyon. A very big hole, 1-star.
Huh.
Right?
Wow.
And look, so if the national parks have 1-star reviews, what chance do you have for your brand?
Right.
And so there's a resort out in Utah. It's called Snowbird. And I've been there. It's an amazing mountain, but it is like this. It is steep. I mean, there is no beginner or intermediate slopes. And so they've gotten a lot of 1-star reviews, and they did an entire campaign, and they have this most amazing photo of this guy at the mountain who's like chest deep in powder skiing. And the 1-star review was too much powder. It's like, if you're a skier, there's no such thing as too much powder. Another one was like 1-star, like too advanced.
Mm.
And the review was, we thought we were taking our lives into our own hands skiing this mountain.
And some people want to do that. So it's the perfect fit.
Exactly.
Right?
If you ski or snowboard, you're a thrill seeker. And what they've done by showcasing these 1-star negative reviews is they've pushed people that they never want to come to the mountain. And they've also created a badge
for the people who do
for
come.
the people that they do want to come.
Yeah, that's pretty cool.
Yeah.
That's really innovative.
Yeah.
I love that. So what have I not asked?
Well, you talked earlier about not ever being on time.
You're either early or you're late. Yeah.
And for larger companies, I think just kind of going with what has worked in the past is kind of the status quo. They tend to do that. So what advice do you have for them to stop and look at that 1% that they could do more when things are working for them, or like they think they're on time, but they're not?
Right. Yeah. Oh, 97% of people cannot think outside the box because they're so constrained by the norms of their industry. And so it's really hard to do that, to get people to think outside. I just was reading a really good book. It's called Unreasonable Hospitality. And it's about a New York City restaurant that became the #1 restaurant in the world. And they have a principle, and I love this principle. They call it 95-5. And they're very focused that 95% of what they are going to do is going to be to the norm and measured and proven, and where they're going to stick with that. But that allows them to take the 5% and to do stuff that's unreasonable, and, you know, to make those investments and do those little touches that make them stand out.
That's neat to
Yeah.
actually carve it out and
Yeah.
put a focus to it.
Yeah, and create
And
the budget
realize
for it.
maybe it won't be perfect,
Right.
but that's okay. We'll learn from it and create something
Right.
different. Yeah, that's a great piece of advice. Just carve a little piece out
Yeah.
to be micro.
Right.
Right. And so I'll give you a great example. So one of the examples they talk about in the book was, you know, they're I think a 4 or 5 star Michelin restaurant. And so there's a group of people from Europe that were over, and this is the last restaurant they were going to. They were true foodies, and they had probably went to 6 or 7 of the great restaurants in New York City. And one of the general manager overheard them saying that they were lamenting the fact that they were going to have to go to the airport. And the one thing they didn't get was a New York City hot dog.
Oh.
You know, God bless them. They wanted to try one of those water dogs. And hearing that, sure enough, the GM goes out into the street, buys 4 or 5 hot dogs, brings them back to the kitchen, and, you know, has the chefs in on this idea, and does a great job of kind of plating them and bringing them out and delivering them that little experience. That's in that 5%.
Yeah.
Right? Of that unreasonable. How do you really?
Well, how do you even get the chef to agree to
Right.
put
Everyone
that
has
on
to
a
be bought
plate
it. Yeah.
in the restaurant?
Right.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Oh, wow. Well, anything else you want to share that you can think of?
No,
I think this has
I
been amazing.
totally buy into the hummingbird effect. That little things that you do can make a big difference, and the little things matter.
Yeah.
And again, when it comes down to things that reinforce your why or your warmth, and little things that reinforce your competence, are the things that are going to stand out.
Well, I really appreciate your time. Hannah, do you have anything?
And I thank you for talking about these. I love hearing about the unique things that people do and how successful they are. And you have 1,001
Yeah, now I
examples
have
that
over
we can talk
5.
about.
Now I tell people my second book I did another 1,000, so I'm not so smart.
Oh my goodness.
That was the last time I made that mistake. Because when you're doing anything, when you start to see hundreds of examples, you just start to see the patterns very clearly. So for all of my books going forward, and there's 11 colors, I've never done more than 400 after I did the first 2 books. Yeah.
That's still a lot.
It's great that you have that many examples.
5,000, over 5,000.
Wow.
Well, and, you know, Hannah's fairly young in marketing, and I think looking at examples like that is such a great way to learn. I mean, you know, I applaud you for that, because every time I've seen you speak, I've heard an example that I could take a little nugget from.
Right.
And I think that that's so important that we continue to look at the history and the examples of what's out there. And it helps us become more innovative as marketers to hear it, because most marketers don't have a lot of time to go do that kind of research that you're putting in front of us. And so I just applaud you for that and really appreciate that. And so excited to have you here to share some of these stories. And we'll have to keep reading them, because with the number that you have, I mean, you know, every time I hear you, I hear another story, but it's just amazing. So thank you.
Thank you for having me.
So much for sharing. And thank you to everyone who's joined us for this podcast. It's time for you to go out and find your hummingbird effect.
Thanks for listening to The Hummingbird Effect with Wendy Coulter. We hope you found this episode valuable. Please be sure to rate and subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. To learn more or to work with Wendy and her team, go to hummingbird-creative.com.